The story begins with the protagonist reflecting on the abstract nature of sight. Born without the ability to see, Kunon's family had long accepted his reality, yet they constantly urged him to persevere and take pride in himself, believing he possessed the traits of a hero. Despite their encouragement, the boy continued to question his existence, struggling to comprehend a sense he did not possess. Shortly afterward, Kunon was summoned by his teacher to begin his formal education. Guided to the classroom by one of the mansion's maids, Kunon found his initial sword training complicated and discouraging. However, the maid encouraged him, noting that he might accomplish impressive feats through magic. This sparked a train of thought in the boy regarding how far he could progress without relying on others, as he was painfully aware of his inability to navigate or perform basic tasks without support. Kunon eventually arrived at the room where his master waited to instruct him in the magical arts. When the teacher inquired about his current capabilities, Kunon used his wand to cast a water spell, surprising her by having already mastered the technique. Curious about the physical manifestation of his magic, Kunon asked about the water's size. The teacher replied that it was roughly the size of an eyeball, but upon realizing the insensitivity of her phrasing, she quickly apologized. However, Kunon was not offended. Instead, he realized that he could perceive the shape of magical manifestations, a discovery that filled him with excitement. This newfound perception made him increasingly curious about the world, particularly regarding the textures and nature of the food he consumed daily. Through touch and taste, he explored his meals with renewed interest. When he picked up a fruit, Kunon correctly identified it as an apple before she could speak. Noting his enthusiasm, the maid watched as he smelled a strawberry, commenting on its strong scent. In her excitement, she began pressing different foods against his cheek for him to guess. Later, Kunon's teacher arrived at the library to ask what book he wished to hear that day. He requested a history of the Holy Knight of the Kingdom of Huglia. Although the sudden request surprised the teacher, the maid assured her it was fine, promising to intervene if the content became too heavy. It was explained that long ago, a great war occurred involving heroes from many lands and a demon lord. The hero of the kingdom managed to defeat the enemy but lost an arm and a leg in the battle. Following the war, some of that hero's descendants were born missing body parts or senses, such as their sight. These children were viewed as reincarnations of the hero, bearing what were known as the hero's scars. Kunon, however, rejected this heavy burden, stating that he was simply himself. He practiced using his own magic, managing to duplicate several spheres of water. To him, mastering magic was the key to seeing and feeling the world. Unfortunately, his physical stamina did not match his magical ambition. Whenever he exerted himself, he became exhausted and fainted. While tucking him into bed, he acknowledged that he lacked the physical strength and knowledge to utilize advanced magic. The maid, noting that he was only 7 years old, insisted he needed to eat better to grow strong. Frustrated that he was lagging behind other children and fainting from basic spells, Kunon expressed a desire to develop muscles, despite the difficulty he faced with running or walking. The maid suggested training in sword techniques to build his body, an idea that excited the boy. Eiko, the maid, decided to speak with Kunon's father to hire a qualified fencing instructor. Before she left, Kunon thanked her for her help. While Eiko excitedly contemplated a possible raise, Kunon simply asked that she keep the noise down during his magic training. The following day, a fencing instructor arrived to train Kunon. During the session, Professor Jenny appeared unexpectedly. The instructor cheerfully noted how quickly the day had passed. Jenny observed that Kunon had taken up swordsmanship, and the boy explained that physical strength was a prerequisite for wielding magic effectively. Looking closely, Jenny realized that Kunon had transformed significantly since she last saw him. She offered him a chance to rest, but Kunon preferred to continue training to improve. Later, Jenny decided to review the Aori spell, known as water magic. When Kunon cast the spell, everyone present was astonished to see several water spheres materialize. The teacher was shocked, finding it frightening that he had reached such a high level almost entirely on his own. The narrative then shifts to Mira, Kunon's future wife. Her maid informed her that the carriage had arrived to take her to see him. Mira remarked that Kunon had always worn an apathetic expression, but her maid reminded her that the union was decided by the royal family. During the journey, Mira reflected on the fact that Kunon bore the hero's scars, making the political marriage a royal duty. She recalled their first meeting, where she had wanted to play and learn what he liked, but Kunon had remained distant and sad, lamenting his helplessness. Returning to the present, Mira felt a deep sadness at the prospect of seeing that dejected face forever. However, upon her arrival, Kunon greeted her with a smile, confusing her completely. She sought to understand what had changed to make him seem so happy. Kunon explained that he had come to like her, a confession that surprised Mira. He then demonstrated his abilities by creating a rainbow above his head, enchanting her. Kunon apologized for troubling her in the past, and she returned the apology. He asked her to listen to his stories, as he had finally experienced fun moments. Seeing him so cheerful, Mira fell deeply in love. On her way home, she felt radiant, considering it a wonderful day and eagerly anticipating their next meeting. Back at the mansion, Kunon was surprised to realize that, for the first time, he had reached out his hand to someone. The maid celebrated, declaring this proof that he was a true gentleman. Motivated by this, Kunon asked his teacher the next day to read more about chivalry, wishing to be worthy of Mira. Meanwhile, the teacher realized she was in a difficult position. She noticed she could no longer maintain 7 water spheres simultaneously, meaning Kunon had evolved far too quickly. There was little left for her to teach him at the basic level. Her initial plan had been to teach simple magic to a child, a low-effort job with a good salary, but she now had to move on to intermediate magic. Although she worried that Kunon was too young to deal with the inherent dangers of advanced magic, she decided to continue the job to support herself. The next day, she attempted to teach Kunon how to imbue feelings into water. To demonstrate, she created 1 icy sphere and 1 hot sphere, explaining that this ability defined a mage's individuality and talent. Kunon decided to try immediately. He cast his magic and asked Eiko to taste it. She realized it was plum juice. The teacher was shocked that he had accomplished in seconds what had taken her an entire night of study. When asked if it was difficult, Kunon casually replied that it was not. At nightfall, Kunon decided to test his perception using 2 apples, trying to better understand aroma and composition. However, he encountered difficulties because he could not physically see colors. Without understanding color, he could not fully grasp magical changes. Despite this, he resolved to continue because he wanted to see everything in the world. At dawn, Kunon went downstairs for breakfast and announced that he could now see colors using magic. Eiko was surprised, though Kunon admitted he likely still couldn't see them properly. When Eiko expressed confusion, Kunon explained that he perceived colors through magic textures. He picked up a green apple and identified it as red. Eiko realized that while the colors appeared distinct to him, he did not yet know their correct names. Kunon agreed, noting it was the first time he had ever perceived these tones. Eiko corrected him, explaining the apple was light green. Although Kunon was confused, realizing that learning to feel color would be difficult, he successfully demonstrated his progress. When Eiko asked how many apples were on the plate, Kunon correctly answered that there were 5, 3 red and 2 green. Eiko was fascinated by the boy's rapid progress and could hardly wait to see what he would achieve next. When Eiko shared her discovery with Kunon's father, the man was stunned to learn that his son could now distinguish colors. Eiko explained that while the range of this magical perception was currently limited, it was sufficient for Kunon to differentiate shades, which became increasingly clear the closer he was to an object, especially through physical touch. Upon being asked if the boy could read, Eiko confirmed that he could, as he had learned to identify the color of ink by running his fingers over the letters. Though Kunon was still mastering the nuances of language, he had already become enchanted by the world of books and illustrated guides. Kunon's father questioned whether the boy might wish to return to the main house to ease the family's worries, but Eiko advised against it. She believed that Kunon was in a vital stage of discovery and that such a move might interfere with his personal goals. Her assessment of his potential was soon proven correct. The following day, Kunon managed to manifest a sphere of red-tinted water. However, the sudden arrival of his family startled him, causing him to drop the magic. The red liquid splashed over him, and seeing her son covered in what appeared to be blood, his mother fainted on the spot. Jenny, observing the scene, realized that Kunon possessed an absurd, almost frightening amount of mana. She began to suspect that he might one day attain the most prestigious title in the magical world, the Blue Mage. The focus shifted to a conversation between Kunon's father and his older brother. The father expressed concern about sending Kunon to a noble school, fearing the boy might be frightened by the outside world after years of isolation. He tasked his older son with protecting Kunon. The brother, haunted by a past failure to protect his sibling, felt a surge of fear but ultimately promised to do everything in his power to be a true older brother. Meanwhile, Kunon's progress continued to bring joy to the household as he began reading through several volumes independently. Jenny noted the cheerful atmosphere and continued her lessons, focusing on social etiquette. She even incorporated Eiko's suggestion of teaching him a sense of humor, hoping to mold him into an elegant yet amusing man. She acknowledged that he was becoming far more adorable and socially capable than he had ever been. As the time for a serious decision approached, Eiko escorted Kunon to the main house to meet his father. On the way, she asked Kunon to use his magic to warm her, which he did successfully. Sensing a shift in the air, Kunon worried he was in trouble for his previous blood sphere mishap, but Aiko reassured him. Upon their arrival, they were greeted by the butler and Kunon's brother. When the brother offered to help him navigate the halls, Kunon politely declined, explaining that his magical senses allowed him to feel everything around him, a revelation that deeply impressed his older sibling. In the meeting with his parents, Kunon initially expressed a desire to avoid the academy, fearing he would only be a burden to others. His father explained that while the king had granted special permission for him to stay home, all nobles were technically required to attend. He warned Kunon that neglecting these duties could harm Mirika's future. Motivated by his desire to protect Mirika's standing, Kunon finally agreed to go. The plan was simplified. He would only need to attend the academy 5 times to take the promotion exams and obtain his official diploma. Kunon later shared the news with Mirika, who was overjoyed at the prospect of spending time with her future husband. Despite his uneasiness about school life and the potential jealousy of other students, Kunon promised to do his best. As they boarded the carriage, Kunon cast a stabilizing spell to prevent the vehicle from shaking, remembering his father's complaints about back pain. During the journey, Kunon confessed to his brother that the desire to disappear, which had plagued his younger years, was gone. He was now determined to live and survive. Upon arriving at the academy, Kunon was welcomed by Mirika. Though he hesitated briefly, overwhelmed by the presence and voices of so many strangers, he took the step forward that the old Kunon never would have taken. His assigned tutor, who had known him since he was very young, was amazed to see how much he had matured as he walked confidently ahead of her. However, his arrival was met with mixed reactions. While some students marveled at him, others, driven by jealousy, viewed him with contempt. During the exams, Kunon easily navigated the time-limited tests, answering every question correctly to his teacher's immense satisfaction. The peace was short-lived, however, as he was soon confronted in the corridors by Lyle, Mirika's brother. Lyle provoked him, openly doubting that Kunon truly held the family blessing. Choosing to settle the matter without a physical brawl, Kunon manipulated the water in the air to create a localized drenching effect on Lyle's trousers. To the surrounding students, it appeared as though the prince had humiliated himself. As Lyle fled in a fit of rage and embarrassment, Kunon's brother panicked over the social fallout, but Kunon remained unbothered, his mind already drifting toward his next goal, finding a hamburger for lunch.